I've had my eyes on Limbus Company for a good while now, and I've always wanted to try it out, especially when they announced the Limbus X Arknights collab. Unfortunately, for a good while, I wasn't able to install Limbus since every time I download the resources needed to run the game, for some reason it defaults to dumping all those resources to my C drive, which is not ideal for me since, as you can see, I'm kinda low on storage. But worry not, because after scouring the community for a while, I found a way to bypass that limitation so I can finally experience this game that a lot of people praise. And just a heads up, this is not a review of the game. I am here to share my experience with the Arknights X Limbus collab while also diving into different aspects of the game. I purposefully made this video at the end of the collab so that way I can freely talk about the content without having to mind spoilers. But before that, an introduction is needed. So I mainly play Arknights and make content out of it. I've been making content for that game for almost 2 years now, but I've been playing Arknights since launch. Now, if you look at my channel and think, why isn't there much content? Well, the answer is that my channel got hacked and it got terminated. Yeah, I made a video about it which you can find on my channel, but anyways, that's about it. So, let's start first with the Arknights collab. Now, as someone who has no knowledge about the world of Limbus, I had to experience first what the story was like, and immediately, after playing until Canto 3, I could already tell that the world of Limbus, or should I say, the city, is a big fucking shithole. Which is my kind of story, don't get it twisted, but we'll get into why I love the story of Limbus later. After getting some initial impression about what the city is like, I can confidently say that they integrated Arknight's lore to Limbus pretty damn well. In fact, I might go ahead and say that it's flawless. From lore accuracy to similarities and etc., I can tell that collabing with Arknights was a decision with these aspects in mind. As for the collab story, it felt like it explained just enough for the story to make sense, but not so much that you need to know what aripathy is or other context needed that you feel like you're being overloaded with information. You never feel like you're missing key information, it's all in the storyline. Now, you might think I might be biased towards Arknights, and it's true, I'm not gonna deny it. However, both the city and Terra just share a lot in common to the point that it's not hard for the writers to whip up something and you can't even tell if it was a well thought out storyline or a rushed concept. And while reading the story for Rebellion de las Masas, as an Arknights player who very well know how the Seaborns work, was very impressed on how much the writers care about attention to detail. For example, during the encounter with Irene, you can see the Limbus folks defending the people of Faro Muerto. Morally speaking, it's the correct thing to do in the eyes of Dante and the gang. Even Heathcliff raised a good point about how it's the Inquisition's fault on why the people of Iberia are suffering because the Inquisition didn't support them. But in Terra, living in the Iberian coast means certain death because more often than not, you're gonna be attacked by sea terrors. If you ever see a congregation of people somewhere near the coast of Iberia, there's a high chance that those are Seaborns, and Irene knows this, so that's why her suspicions are not without merit. Scotty even mentioned it at the start of the collab by saying, "The coast of Iberia are hardly good places for people to live. Those things can go anywhere in this world, but they thrive at places that meet the ocean. So how did people manage to build a village in a place like this?" And without this context, I can see how easily it is to picture Irene as an unreasonable inquisitor. Now, you pair that with people who are new to this place and didn't know any better, and you have a very tense standoff between an inquisitor and Limbus company. But you might be thinking, Amiya is there and she should know this info. Why did she side with Limbus people during this whole ordeal? Well, at this point in the Arknights timeline, which is Undertides, Amiya has only heard of the Seaborn but has no experience in terms of encountering Seaborn, so she is actually in the dark until at some point in a story where Calcit explained to Amiya that Irene's suspicion was correct. Plus, she is a compassionate girl and prefers negotiation over conflict, but also, she's not afraid to throw hands when she finds a proper side to defend. I could go on for hours talking about this, but this is not that kind of video. However, someone I know called Sunul made a video about the Arknights X Limbus collab, so I recommend checking out that video if you want more context. So let's swiftly move on to the next thing I want to talk about, which is how they handled the event and how faithful the collab is to the source material, which is Arknights. First are the enemies. In Limbus, when you defeat an enemy, most of them leave corpses on the ground. This event, however, in case you haven't noticed, the Sea Terrors, they don't actually leave any corpses behind, and instead, they disintegrate, just like in Arknights. The last night was also handled pretty well. In Limbus, it's a tough fight, and I can only imagine how hard it will also be when you do it in hard mode. But why did I say they handled it pretty well? Well, first, the passive skill of the last night in Limbus that allows it to go into second phase is called Fate's Favored Child. And in Arknights, specifically in Integrated Strategies 3, the roguelike mode, there are 4 endings, and the second ending in particular, when you reach the boss stage, is called Fate's Favored Child. And also on your way to reach the second ending, final boss of Integrated Strategies 3, in order to make your life easier when fighting the last knight, you have the option to look for the knight's corpus, so that in the fight, the knight is inflicted with a debuff that gives him minus 80% defense, while in Limbus, if you pass the check in the second phase, you get the knight's corpus, which makes the last knight take plus 80% damage, which was a really cool addition. And then we have the mission accomplished screen when you finish a fight, and also the same music plays during the results screen, just like in Arknights.
앞에 나선 보람이 있었구려.
No, they put the Arknights music. Oh.
Also, a cool Easter egg when you reach the dungeon in the story, you can see this icon on a node, which is the same thing you see in Arknights whenever you encounter an emergency node. Plus, the boss icon also uses the same one from Arknights, which was a really nice touch. When it comes to E.G.O as well, the Ishmael E.G.O with Skadi, you can see Ishmael using Skadi's sword in the combination to Ishmael's anchor, and then the initial strike animation for Ishmael's E.G.O is a callback to Skadi's attack animation. This should be the part where I should talk about the other E.G.Os as well. The only problem is, as you can see, I don't have them. But hey, fuck it, we can skim through it. On Gregor's Moinar E.G.O, I can see a lot of people calling the initial cast as aura farming, and that's exactly what he does in Arknights. In Limbus, he accumulates stacks until you reach 40 and then you throw hands on the enemies. You'll just have to pray that you roll heads for maximum damage. While Arknights Moinar does fuck all when you deploy him and doesn't attack at all until you activate his skill. Honglu's Ling E.G.O is actually quite accurate. He summons 2 Thunderers initially and then they combine into a higher Thunderer with the same pose and attack. As for Calcit and Monster, let me tell you right now, she ain't doing all that, alright? Command Meltdown in Arknights looks something like this. It would have made more sense if Monster has a 4-coin attack skill animation instead that is handled the same as Gregor's when you flip a coin for each attack, and the damage depends on the face of your coins, of course. Overall, you could tell that this collab was made with passion, at least at the POV of someone who mainly plays Arknights. But because of this collab, I did try out Limbus Company, and to end this video, I would like to share my experience with you all. Story-wise, it's great. It's dark and gritty while also having some ridiculous moments to light up the mood surrounding the sinners. For me, this is my kind of story. Now, don't get me wrong. I love wholesome stories, even cliche ones from time to time, but too much of it does tend to get boring in the long run. In Limbus, it's a 70-30 split between depression and wholesome, but it's leaning towards depression, of course. I've been told before that if you're someone who enjoys the story of Arknights, you'll also enjoy the story of Limbus, and ever since I played it, that statement has proven to be true. During the 4 weeks I've been playing Limbus daily, I've been hooked by the story since Canto 3. So, upon editing this video, actually, I have something to confess, because as you can see here, I clocked about 240 hours since recording this video. And, well, I added an extra 40 more hours. I am genuinely addicted to this game, holy shit. While Canto 1 and Canto 2 felt a bit weak for me in the story, it was all worth it when I reached Canto 3 because man, this game does not hold back. We dive into the story of Sinclair and his traumatic past, and this game does not pull back in their description of any fucked up setting the place has. Arknights also has these moments, but it's a bit muted since it's a Chinese gacha game first and foremost, and they have to consider their censorship laws. That's why whenever there's something tragic happening in the story of Arknights, you'll just have to take their description for what it is, unlike Limbus where they have the freedom to do so. Overall, it's an enjoyable story so far, and I assume that's gonna keep going until I reach the latest chapter in Limbus, which I think is Canto 8. But I think I'm gonna slow down once the collaboration banner ends, since the reason why I've been spamming Limbus in the past 4 weeks is to farm Lunacy for pulls, hoping I could get at least 3 out of 4 of the E.G.Os available for this collab. So far, I have 2 out of 4, which is Ishmael and Faust, which, by the way, I had to shard for crying out loud. 200 pulls and not a singular collab E.G.O is demonic. But fortunately, I am not unfamiliar with this method. Arknights Gacha has trained me for this. Before it had a guaranteed feature, it has always been a battle of 50-50 until changes were made, so it is what it is. And finally, to end the video, I would like to talk about the difficulty of the game. I've been reading comments about how the difficulty in this game is vertical, and it shows. But part of it is self-inflicted, I think. Once you understand and play around the enemy's mechanics, it's actually not that bad. Like, my first roadblock was 448, which was the dome bike fight. As soon as I figured out that I just need to make sure I win every clash and avoid getting hit by bloom stacks, it was smooth sailing after a few tries, and it did take me a while of trial and error, but the payoff is worth it. However, I sometimes think to myself that the mini-bosses in this game somehow feels harder than the final boss, and then I realized that during the final part of each canto, you enter the Dungeon of Fathoms, which is basically a mirror dungeon, and inside that dungeon, you slowly collect relics to aid you, which essentially makes you stronger if you pick the correct relic. It also helps that you slowly build E.G.O resources when you progress through the dungeon. I also learned that sinner levels matter in this game. Now, I know what you're thinking. That's common knowledge, dumbass. And you're right, I am a dumbass, but I've just been used to the system where you can ignore levels since they're mostly stat increase like HP and attack. But in this game, sinner levels helps you gain an edge during clashes. I think it's something about for every 3 levels, you gain 1 extra clash power. Feel free to let me know how it works in the comment section. And while we're on the topic of experience, here is my current team. I have been able to catch up to Canto 8 and these are the IDs I have. And if you see an Uptide 3 level 50 Merceau, I think you're hallucinating and you should probably talk to a doctor as soon as possible. And I have to come clean. After Canto 1, after I heard how every sinner talks and the rest of the gang, I then proceed to play the game muted. Now, before you raise your pitchforks and torches and burn me on a stake, just know that I also do the same with Arknights and every other game I play. I know it's weird, but I listen to different stuff when I'm playing. It's a habit of mine for the longest time, so it's nothing personal with the game. It's just my preferred method, alright? But anyways, I'm just yapping at this point, so I'll end the video here. Let me know some bigger mistakes I need to avoid. But that is all for my experience of Limbus Company. After I get a full grip on how the game fully works, I might review the game, but I just need to experience more of it first. Thank you so much for watching. Leave a like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications for future Arknights and Enfield content or even Limbus content, who knows. Bless your faces and have a great day, gamers.